Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story in which our OP outplayed his opponent behind his own rules. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. The building. Our family friend, who we'll call John, not his real name obviously, told my parents, my sister, and me this story years ago when he tried to build a new shed in his garden. In our country, when you want to build or demolish a building on your property that's over a minimum square feet, you have to put in a formal request with the county before you can do anything. The county has to go over the plans and has three options: agree unconditionally, agree but request you make changes, deny. Since the shed John was planning to build was over the minimum required number of square feet, he put in a formal request and waited the normal 8 to 10 weeks the county has to go over the plans. After 12 weeks, he hadn't got an answer and called. He was told that the decision wasn't made yet due to some nonsense reasoning only county officials can come up with, and he had to wait at least another 8 weeks. These periods are used so that the building plans are officially announced to the neighborhood and neighbors have time to view, suggest changes, and make complaints to certain buildings that may have an impact on the value of their property. This continued, and 6 months after he sent his plans, John received a formal letter stating his plans to build his shed were denied. No further explanation given. This is where the compliance comes in. Remember how I stated that you also need to have permission to demolish a building as well as to build it? Well, John started to build the shed despite not having the permission to build it. When the building was finished, he made a formal request to demolish it. This time, the county needed only 4 months to give an answer. Request to demolish, denied. No explanation. And our next story. Are you absolutely sure you want me to close tonight? Back when I worked for a major retail chain, I was a low-level manager. Each of us section managers had one part of the store assigned to us: electronics, sporting goods, toys, front lanes, etc. Besides all the general work, we were responsible for keeping that section stocked and rearranging the shelves in stock when corporate decided to change the layout. I'd moved across the country into an equivalent position at another store. I put equivalent in quotes because at my previous store, I was the jack of all trades who got assigned wherever I was most needed because I was a fast learner and a hard worker. At my new store, I was just the most junior section manager and got assigned the two sections no one else wanted: seasonal and mini-seasonal, the ones that got changed around the most often. This meant I had to come in at 5 a.m. to reset my areas twice as often as anyone else. Normally this wasn't much of a problem, but this time my manager scheduled me to close the Sunday night before I was supposed to come in at 5 a.m. Monday and reset my area. I told her that wouldn't work since closing managers on weekends always ended up staying until after midnight. Well, that's the schedule, she said. I can't change it. Now, I knew our company rules. I'd been in charge of monitoring and enforcing them at one point at my old store. One of these rules was that hourly employees like me had to be allowed a minimum of 8 hours between shifts. Since closing shifts are officially scheduled until 11 p.m., I was not allowed to come back in at 5 a.m. even if I got off at the scheduled time. Since that was only 6 hours, I tried to explain this and my manager blew it off. I worked my closing shift as scheduled. As expected, due to high traffic and low staffing, we were there getting everything restocked and fronted until almost 2 a.m. According to the schedule, I had to be back in 3 hours. As we were leaving for the night, I told my manager, "See you at 10. Her, you're scheduled for 5. You have to set up your sections to the new plan. Me, yeah, but besides being against company policy, I found out that it's also against the law in this state to make an hourly employee work 2 shifts with less than 8 hours in between. Her, what? Why didn't you say something sooner so I could change the schedule? Me, I did. While my manager had been willing to break company policy to screw me over, she knew better than to break labor laws and didn't argue further. I showed up for my shift at 10 a.m. the next day and found my manager, utterly exhausted, still trying to get my area set up. This was normally a 2 or 3 hour task, but she didn't know what she was doing and had gotten no sleep. When I got in, she told me she was going home. She looked haggard with dark circles under her eyes and that unfocused stare people get when they're too exhausted to even move their eyes. I took over and had the work finished in under half an hour. The next day, my manager didn't show up for a shift. It turned out that on her drive home, she'd gotten in a minor car accident, then been arrested for DWI. For those who live in places that don't have the distinction, DWI is broader than DUI. DWI means driving while impaired and can include things besides intoxication, such as driving with a cast or without your glasses or when too tired. Generally, judges are lenient about non-intoxication DWIs, but when an accident is involved, not so much. I never found out the details of what happened with my manager's DWI charge, but she wasn't at work for a couple of weeks, so I take it that the charge wasn't just dropped. To top it off, I found out later that my manager was the one who made the schedules for us section managers, so her claim that she couldn't change it was a straight-up lie. She just didn't want to. And our next story. Not happy for me to use my professional judgment? Fine, that's fine. So I work in a hospital, an old hospital on one of the oldest wards on the top floor. For anyone not in the UK right now, we're experiencing a heat wave like hasn't been seen for the past 40 years. It's not rained for a good few months, and it's just all around unpleasant to live in. I've been working night shifts to combat the heat, and for the past few weeks have been nursing two 30-something-year-old patients I'll call Sandy and Amy. These two haven't been too bad with me, calling me their favorite nurse when I'm on shift and other such bullocks, but they've been downright rude and aggressive to my colleagues on day shift. Security's been called more than once to de-escalate their tantrums, so I knew to be cautious around them and keep them at arm's length. A few shifts go by uneventfully, so I thought. The other day, we got the full rundown and handover. Both Sandy and Amy had complained about every single staff member who'd interacted with them, from someone sitting at a desk to one of their healthcare professionals flirting with male patients. The comments were vile and bitter, all completely unfounded and literally nothing more than two women trapped in bed having nothing better to do than make up stories. We work damn hard, and if we get 30 seconds to sit down, we're going to do it. And we might even have a drink at the desk to rehydrate ourselves too. How dare we, apparently. The night team, including me, were the subject of a few complaints about flirting and talking about holiday plans. Not even talking loudly, just literally talking about holiday plans. One of their main complaints was how care rounds, where we document a patient's pain, position, and wounds every 2 hours, has to be completed without us physically asking those questions. They were in constant pain, so why had we documented pain scores as 0? We obviously needed to ask to get a truly accurate score, they said, and refused to allow us to use our clinical experience to fill in the chart. Now, if a patient is in pain, a fully independent-oriented adult patient, they can call us and tell us how much pain they're in so we can manage it with analgesia. They have call bells. They can even walk to the nurse's station if need be. And if they're not able to vocalize their pain, e.g., they have dementia, we can look out for telltale signs of pain such as facial contortion, fidgeting, moaning, etc. A patient saying they have 10 for 10 pain, yet who sits there watching Jeremy Kyle while shoving chocolate raisins down their gullet probably isn't in the throes of childbirth-like agony, and likewise, a patient who says they're in no pain but have beads of sweat forming on their brow and are grinding their teeth down like a bear on a trout probably has some pain. And someone sound asleep likely isn't feeling pain as they're rested and relaxed enough for their body to allow them to drift into the ether. If they wake up in pain, that of course would be documented. However, the complaint was that we hadn't documented their actual pain score, and obviously, according to them, we couldn't know this actual pain score without asking them. I spoke with both of them and reiterated their concerns. I explained how we were trained in pain management, etc., yet both agreed that they would like to be asked during the shift. So, like a good HCP, from the time my shift started to the time it ended, every 2 hours, instead of just walking by and seeing them sleeping soundly, I woke them up to ask how their pain was. Sleeping like a baby? Up you get. Just drifting off into a fitful slumber? Wake up, Sandy. It's time to document your pain score. Finally passed out despite the bothersome heat? I'll be shaking you awake there, matey. From the time my shift started at 2000 until it ended at 7:30, every 2 hours on the dot, I woke them both up to accurately document their pain. Of course, they reported no pain at every wake-up call. 3 days of this goes by, and last night, before lights out, Sandy tells me not to wake her up during the night, as with the heat, she's barely getting any sleep due to being woken up every 2 hours. Amy agrees. I say that unfortunately, we need to accurately document pain scores, as they weren't happy with us using the professional clinical judgment to ascertain whether they were in pain or not. We'd need to continue to ask. Unless they were happy with us using professional experience to note if there was any sign of pain while sleeping. Yeah, it turns out that's a good idea, apparently. Who knew? And our last story. No bridges allowed. So some family members bought a small island a while back to live on. They went to great lengths when they were deciding to buy it to make sure they could build a bridge to it. It's less than 400 feet across. I don't think there were ever going to be center supports needed. It was going to be a small, tasteful, blend-in with the country scenery kind of bridge that no one would see. They're very earth-friendly people. They were 90% of the way through getting it approved, including sign-off from the Parks Transportation Authority, even a nearby Aboriginal council. Everyone was happy, so they bought the island and started to renovate the house on it. Then, out of nowhere, comes an intern at City Hall or something who's like, "Whoa, wait, there are new rules in that area. It's a historical area. No building within 500 feet of the shoreline. Denied." So they were a bit put out, not wanting to have to row a boat over to their house every night after work. Might be nice midday, but think carrying groceries at 8 p.m. and it's raining. So the brainstorming starts. We had silly ideas, everything from catapults to giant slides going each direction, until I suggested they just buy a 400-foot yacht and park it sideways. Drive on one side, drive off the other. This was shot down because you can't dock anything that doesn't leave at least 5 feet or something like that of open water in the middle of the channel for small boats to pass through. So how about 2 boats with a tiny drawbridge between them? Now we're talking. Fast forward another half hour of talking, and we're at the final solution they're happily using right now. 5 normal-sized pontoon boats with 3 linked together parked on one shore and 2 linked together and parked on the other, and a small drop bridge in the middle. Each boat is properly licensed and has all the tags and everything. Every summer, they drop a small motor on a couple of them and take them for a drive around the lake. No one can say they aren't boats, and there's nothing against docking boats in a straight line across the water as long as you leave open water in the middle. This is my favorite malicious compliance story from my own life so far. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.